Everyone, thank you for joining us today for this exclusive webinar on how to accelerate your cloud journey using automation. My name is Mark Sebdula with Vigilant Technologies, and I will be your host today. Soon we will be joined by our speakers for today's presentation, Solutions Architect, also with Vigilant Technologies, Amrita Mukherjee, and CTO and co-founder of RackWare, Todd Matters. Today we will provide our attendees with a detailed overview of cloud adoption considerations, followed by common roadblocks on your journey to the cloud. Then we will dive into best practices for securing your public cloud deployments. We will also see which tools and services are available to us on the leading public cloud providers. We will briefly touch on CIS benchmarks, what they are, and how to leverage pre-built images to meet your compliance requirements. And finally, we'll open up the floor to questions. But before we begin, let's get to a few housekeeping notes. If you have any questions, whether technical or related to today's topic, please submit them using the Q&A box on your screen. We will also have the full recording of today's presentation available to all attendees after, so you can view it later or share it with your colleagues. Let's start today with a very brief discussion on who Vigilant Technologies is. We are a boutique global consultancy delivering advisory, implementation, and managed services for over 20 years. We are the quality choice, bringing years of knowledge and experience to all customers. We can work in parallel with your team among many projects, with leadership that is accessible and flexible to ensure personalized and agile service. We have proven success supporting clients worldwide, all of which are referenceable. We have been in business for over 20 years, as noted, and along the way, we've been involved in over 50 cloud implementations worldwide, over 150 plus enterprise application projects for our 200 plus enterprise clients. Vigilant Technologies is located here in Troy, Michigan, just outside of Detroit, and we have offices in Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Chile, and India, along with sales offices throughout the US. Vigilant Technologies is an Oracle Platinum partner, providing support for all Oracle technologies. We are also partnered in providing support for Microsoft, including Azure and Modern Workplace, along with AWS and Google Cloud. We have a lot of referenceable examples and great successes we can share among a number of industries from manufacturing to retail that include both enterprise and small to medium-sized businesses. Our professional, advisory, and managed services models provide clients with an IT roadmap and consultation to map out your future state, implementation and upgrade to get your future state, and ongoing support to monitor and provide administration of your new environments. Vigilant Technologies is happy to have teamed up with RackWare as our cloud automation partner. RackWare provides our clients with an intelligent, highly automated, hybrid cloud management platform that extends across physical and virtual environments. It provides greater availability and flexibility for enterprise IT users and reduced costs for enterprise IT providers, supporting a suite of services including disaster recovery, backup, hybrid cloud management, and cloud migration and replication. With that being said, I'm excited to introduce today's speakers. Todd Matters is the co-founder and CTO at RackWare. Todd has years of technical experience and holds over 10 patents. Prior to RackWare, Todd worked with QLogic and Unisys. He was also the co-founder, CTO, and vice president of engineering at InfiniCon. Along with Todd, we have Amrita Mukherjee speaking with us today. Amrita is the principal security and cloud architect here at Vigilant Technologies. Amrita started her career as a programmer, then moved on to become an Oracle Apps DBA, and has been a cloud architect for the past 5+ years. She has direct experience architecting and moving several types of workloads to various public clouds. With that being said, I'm happy to pass this over to Amrita. Amrita, the floor is yours.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining our webinar. Since our topic today talks about moving to the cloud, I just wanted to quickly touch upon some key recommendations from institutions like Gartner. These recommendations will serve as a primer for your cloud journey. That is, if you're not already on one. If you are already on your cloud journey, then it'll help you take a step back and evaluate whether your journey so far is healthy or not. So moving on, cloud is here to stay, right? So whether we like it or not, it's not going to go away. It is pretty much where the industry is headed. So it's up to us to decide how long we want to wait before we get with the program. So if you're not an early adopter, do not worry. Most of us are not. However, it is time to start dipping your toes. So before you embark on your cloud journey, here's a quick checklist to ensure that you're setting yourself up for success. Number one is to build your cloud skills. If you want to be in the fast lane on your journey to the cloud, train now. Number two is hyper automation. Now you're going to hear this term as often as you hear cloud going forward. So the key to succeeding as a cloud provider or a consumer is to automate everything you can. Number three is use cloud native tooling. There is a misconception that if you use too many cloud native tools, you are going to be locked in to that vendor. Now, it's not completely a misconception. Yes, you are going to have some level of vendor lock-in, but without using cloud native tooling, you will not extract optimum value from your cloud subscription. So use cloud native tooling wherever you can. Number four is govern and then govern some more. I cannot say this enough. Governance is key to optimizing your cloud experience from both an operational and financial standpoint, especially if you have sensitive data that you want to put on your cloud. Number five is invest in a cloud center of excellence. This is not the time to be stingy. Invest in a dedicated cloud team, and they will help you tie your enterprise cloud adoption strategy together and facilitate success. Similarly, invest in a cloud partner. Make sure you choose a cloud agnostic partner who will guide you and help you choose the right solution for your particular problem. Don't be biased towards one provider or another. You might be more familiar with a certain provider just because they have been in the market longer, but that doesn't mean that for your particular problem, they are the right solution provider, right? So keep an open mind, make sure you evaluate all of your options, which is why it's important to go with the cloud agnostic partner. Number seven is focus on cost management. Runaway costs are a major downside to cloud services, and that is if you lose visibility, right? So to avoid a costly mistake, ensure you have full visibility. And that brings us to number eight, that is monitor and optimize consumption. Again, use cloud native tools that are at your disposal to optimize and reallocate consumption wherever and whenever possible. And lastly, share in security. Anyone who has heard me speak before, I belabor this point. Security on cloud is a shared responsibility model. So if you're putting data on the public cloud, you are sharing in the security of that data. So once you have put your data, say, on Oracle Cloud, it doesn't mean that you can just walk away from it. You are still responsible for making sure that that data is secure. So please keep that in mind. Next. All right, so those of us who've been in the IT industry long enough know that we like coming up with terms, right? We like stringing words together. So just the term cloud wasn't doing it for us, and now we talk about cloud first versus cloud smart. So what does it mean? So according to Gartner, and the reason why we came up with these terms is, according to Gartner, many organizations' expectations for cloud do not align with their ability to execute. making it difficult for infrastructure and operation leaders to design a strategy that meets business goals, right? So, people in the industry sat down, figured out how do we bridge this gap. So according to Gartner, Gartner recommends that IO leaders should close the gap between cloud expectations and reality by identifying obstacles to a successful cloud journey, right? Think ahead. Think what can be problematic. Identify those. They should also leverage automation to reduce the risk of security breaches and compliance violations by creating an automated governance strategy that includes both cloud services and technologies. I told you, you'll hear automation again and again whenever you're talking about cloud, right? Then, IO leaders should also speed cloud migration by using a selection process of faster, easier, valuable, efficient, repeat. In short, fever, right? And the keywords there are efficient and repeat. Again, you should be able to deploy faster by being able to repeat your workflows, right? That are moving your workloads to the cloud. And there again, you need automation. Another key point to remember is that you can improve performance and cost savings by focusing on simplicity to architect your cloud journey. In short, keep it simple and safe. Do not over-architect. Finally, don't lead with technology, lead with value. So you will improve the success of cloud initiatives by championing workload migrations that reflect your organization's cultural preferences and not just their technological or compliance environments. So try and understand where are they coming from? What is their pain point and how you could use cloud to solve those pains. So how do successful companies approach cloud migration? The top questions to ask about cloud migration initiatives are, what is the smartest approach, right? Seems intuitive. There could be multiple approaches to migrating to the cloud. Let's put them all down on this piece of paper and figure out which one is the smartest. Again, not, it has to be the smartest, not the best. There is a difference. Then figure out which leaders and teams need to be involved to make this migration a success. And finally, figure out how the migration is affecting your business. You obviously want a positive outcome. You want to solve business problems, but you also have to be cognizant of the fact that it will change somehow some of your business processes, right? For instance, compliance requirements or other support processes. It might change some of those, and you need to be cognizant of those so you don't lose sight. So how do you go about this? First of all, again, align objectives, talk to both business and IT, and figure out a value proposition that resonates with both, right? Next, develop a plan of action. Select the right vendors and successfully negotiate contracts. Cloud contracts can be complicated and can cause vendor lock-in if you do not negotiate them or read them or pay attention to those contracts. And once you've done so, you're ready to deploy and optimize your workload placements. But before you start deploying workloads on the cloud, ensure you have an established governance and risk mitigation strategy so you can minimize workload disruptions and, in the end, establish robust processes. And finally, once you have finished moving your workloads to the cloud, evaluate and evolve your cloud footprint. In other words, it is a continuous process, and that means that you have to be able to optimize and scale rapidly, which brings us back to hyperautomation. With that being said, I will now pass the mic to Todd Matters from RackWare and ask him to talk about how automation tools help and accelerate your transition to the cloud. Todd, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Amrita. I'd be pleased to talk about how we can provide highly automated solutions to make your cloud journey economical and as easy as possible. We do have a software management suite for cloud. You can go to the next slide, please. So we support actually three major use cases: migration, disaster recovery, and backup. That's a converged solution. And we do have a hybrid cloud management solution. I'm really just going to be talking about the migration and the DR solutions today. We have actually two forks in our product line. One is what we call RMM, RackWare Management Module. This is for IaaS. It's a server-based product designed to deal with entire servers, full stack from the operating system level up. And we just introduced Swift. This is our Kubernetes and container offering. I should point out we're very enterprise focused. So there's a number of features to facilitate some of the more difficult and complex elements in an enterprise data center relative to cloud adoption. Next. So the underpinning technology is the same for all those use cases. So it is a true any-to-any replication and sync technology. It works data center to data center, and importantly, it also works for physical servers. So the software can replicate, let's say, from a Dell server to an HP server. This is an image-based technology. So there's a lot of technology around understanding the underlying target hardware and being able to configure the image to that hardware. Now, of course, the software supports virtual machines, but we took a bit of a different approach than what you may have seen before. The VMDK approach actually works reasonably well if you're within the same family of hypervisor and you're actually close from a version perspective. But the cross-hypervisor case tends not to work well, especially for larger, more complex VMDKs. And even if the version level within the same family is too far apart, there's issues. So what we did, we took our physical server technology and we apply it to virtual machines. So to the software, the only difference between a physical server and a virtual machine is they have different sets of device drivers. There's numerous advantages to this architecture. One is the cross-hypervisor case falls out very easily. Any to any, from pretty much any hypervisor to any other hypervisor, that works. Physical servers work, physical to physical, but also physical to virtual. If you're going from your data center into cloud, you probably have some physical servers. With this architecture, that happens seamlessly and transparently. The other major advantage is the workflow and the feature set is going to be the same regardless of the hypervisor that you're running or whether it's a physical server, and also regardless of what cloud you're going to. So this architecture also makes it very easy to support a very large number of cloud providers. And we have a special relationship with Oracle. OCI is a great cloud, but we do support all the major cloud providers. So the software, all it has to do is interface to the provisioning APIs in the cloud, and then it uses its own technology to perform that replication. So from data center to cloud, again, that includes physical servers or pretty much any hypervisor. You don't have to be worried about, oh, I'm coming from VMware and I'm going to a cloud with a different hypervisor and there's these restrictions and these workflows, or maybe we're coming from Hyper-V and there's a whole different set of rules and nomenclature around it. It's all the same. The other nice fallout of this architecture is cloud to cloud works. So if you're running in Amazon or Azure and you'd like to migrate to OCI, or perhaps just implement disaster recovery, separating the risk across different cloud providers, that's always a wise strategy. The software works very nicely for cloud to cloud as well. And importantly, for the DR use case, the fallback is also the same. It's seamless. Again, this is a true any-to-any replication and sync. So the software can fall back from a cloud server back to the servers in your data center. Okay, next slide. So for the Swift product, Swift adopted many of the same major tenets for the RMM. So namely, that is any to any. So in the Swift architecture, it does operate on Kubernetes and containers, and it can replicate and sync from pretty much any Kubernetes environment, whether it be Docker, OpenShift, take your pick, whether it's on-prem or cloud, the cloud to cloud works as well. It's particularly good at masking and automating storage translations from one type of Kubernetes environment into another, again, regardless of cloud. Again, it uses a lot of the same tenants and a lot of the same architecture elements as the RMM. So that makes it actually fairly easy to add this very important product category. We introduced this in September, and that for migration, the DR solution for Swift is being introduced in December. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit more about the RMM and how you would set it up. So let's say we have a set of workloads on the origin side, and we want to replicate those into target cloud. So first, you would spin up a relatively small virtual machine. The RMM is a Linux application and installs on Red Hat, CentOS, or Oracle Linux. Importantly, you don't need to install anything on the origin side. There's a whole console for the RMM, very easy to use. There's a number of wizards. You tell it the IP addresses that you want it to replicate. The software connects in over the network at the operating system level. So you don't need to configure access to hypervisors. There's no access to storage arrays. It sees the world through the eyes of the operating system, because applications see the world through the eyes of the operating system, and that allows it to make these replications from the any to any. So first, the software does a discover or an assessment. There's multiple levels of discover and assessment. At the very least, it discovers information about the underlying hardware and software. It can do a deeper analysis in aggregate. I'm not going to talk about that, but it understands enough about the hardware to auto provision. You can click in the target environment. So it will make sure that it provisions a correctly sized server in the target environment, so your applications will perform equally as well or better in that target environment. Now, this replication is completely non-disruptive. You're still up and running in your origin environment. After the replication, upon a reboot, you have an exact replica of the origin server running in the target, except for two things: device drivers. Now, the device drivers are going to be different because the hardware is going to be different. It's still virtual, but it is hardware. The other thing that would be different is networking. The software will automatically re-IP your images to be consistent with the target environment. Everything else is exactly the same. So all the applications are there, application settings. It's the exact same operating system version. All the users that can log into the origin can log into the target. Now, another important capability is the sync, the Delta sync. So as I mentioned, this is non-disruptive. You're still generating transactions in the origin side. And then when you do your cutover, you would do your final syncs. The software copies over only the changed bytes. This is highly efficient. It copies over only the changed bytes to the target. And after a quick verification, you're up and running in the cloud environment. You go to click. And one more. Okay, so for disaster recovery, you can probably see this is a building block approach. So on top of the replication technology is a very sophisticated policy engine. So for disaster recovery, you would set up a policy. There's all kinds of things you can define in the policy. You define your RPO, or the frequency that you want to do your syncs, how you do your syncs. You can define things like boot order and post-boot delay for groups or applications of servers, so that your servers boot in the proper order and they come up with a minimum of manual intervention. There's pre and post scripts that you can define to glue together infrastructure as part of this process. But the real key here is Once that policy is defined, this is a highly automated process. You generate alerts, so you'll get alerts if there's any issues. You can go in and resolve them. There's a dashboard. You can generate all kinds of reports on a daily or weekly basis, or what have you. Next. And the whole point here is, if you have an extended outage on the origin side, you can fail over and run production in that target environment. Now, another very important feature is the fallback. Assuming you don't need to rebuild your origin environment, the software, as part of the fallback procedure, simply reverses the sync direction. So all those production transactions that occurred in your target DR environment, when you do your fallback, they'll simply be synced back to the origin servers, and you're up and running. Next slide. Now, there's some very important features around being able to tune and tweak your cost, RPO, and RTO objectives. Now, the first is what we call dynamic provisioning. This is a low-cost option. In dynamic provisioning, if you go back to that slide where I showed you how the RMM would do a migration, you would still deploy the RMM server in the target cloud environment, but instead of replicating directly to target servers, the RMM can capture the images from the operating system level up, keep them in a storage location in the target cloud. You can create a policy, you can sync to it with an excellent RPO. And the important thing is, during steady state, you're not using any compute resources except for maybe a little bit for the RMM. Next slide. And then only if you're doing a DR test or it's a real failover, only then will the software provision the target servers, complete the replication process, and you're up and running. So this is an excellent economical solution. It's a very easy way to test your servers. Married with cloud technology, cleanup is very quick and very easy. Next slide. Now, for more aggressive recovery time objectives, you can replicate and sync directly to target servers. Then the RMM will sync from app A and B on the left to app A and B on the right. Your RPO is excellent. You can keep that storage in the middle to double as backup. You can keep recovery points, protect from malware. There's a lot of features around there. Single file restore if you'd like it. And the point with this configuration is your recovery time is very quick. It's about the time it takes to reboot those target servers. Next slide. So the whole point here is, it's not a one-size-fits-all for your DR requirements. So you're going to have lower priority servers. You're going to want to save money for those, to protect those lower priority servers. So you're going to want to implement dynamic provisioning. Now, for your more mission critical, maybe your larger databases, probably your infrastructure servers, those servers you probably want to pre-provision so that they're available in a much quicker fashion to facilitate that highly automated failover operation. So again, you can tune and tweak to create as many policies as necessary to meet the needs of your servers, while at the same time creating the most economical solution for your data center environment. Next slide. So this is the support matrix. The support, if you look at the right-hand side, support is largely relative to the operating system version. So Windows, you get back to 2008. Actually, we'll still do 2003 for a larger deployment. Red Hat CentOS, you get back to version 5. But there's also support for Oracle Linux, Ubuntu, and SUSE. We'll also do Debian sometimes. And of course, we support all the major cloud environments as well. So at this point, I'll turn it back over to Amrita.
Thank you, Todd. That was a lot of good information. And well, I hope you guys are ready for some jokes, because that's all we're going to do here on onwards. I'm kidding. So while you guys, admire my superior sense of humor, I want you guys to ask yourselves a few questions. So when was the last time you had a successful DR test? Was it a cold DR test? Was it a warm DR test? Do you know your business's recovery time and recovery point objectives in the event of a disaster? How do you define disaster? In your mind, is it just tornadoes and earthquakes, or do you consider cybersecurity threats like ransomware attacks as a disaster too? So why am I making you do this mental exercise right now? The point I'm trying to highlight is that your company's DR strategy cannot afford to be on the back burner any longer. So we're starting to see a lot of our customers come to us looking to implement a DR solution. That brings us to the case studies that I wanted to talk about today. You can go on to the next slide, Marcus. Thank you. So CentroMotion is it's a family of companies that are industry leaders in industrial actuation and control solutions. The key phrase there is they're a family of companies, which essentially means that they have a plethora of applications because it all came from different entities, right? So they have Oracle e-Business Suite, they have Hyperion, they have Demantra, they have Windchill, Bassware, B2B, Loftware, and many others. So when they were looking to implement a DR solution, they came to us and they presented that, okay, these are all of our applications and these are all part of the critical application ecosystem, and all of these need to have like stringent RTOs and RPOs. So we proposed that, hey, you know what, you should look at OCI because you can piggyback on OCI's reliability, resiliency, and security. That is, half of your problem solved from a physical hardware standpoint. For your DR environment. And then on top of that, there's a lot of stuff that you can do on a public cloud like Oracle, which simplifies your DR solution, right? And it doesn't cause a whole bunch of costs and heartburn. So we helped CentroMotion right from the start with their provisioning and activation of their OCI tenancy, to setting up their identity pieces and networking pieces, setting up their storage, virtual machines, etc. For the databases, for the EPS database, we used Oracle Data Guard to set up their DR, and all of this was a warm DR, by the way, right? So it's what is now called a pilot light DR. So it's a warm DR in the sense that it's in sync with your primary, right? But it's not costing you a whole bunch because it's running on minimal chips. So that's what we set up for CentroMotion. So now where does RackWare come into play is they had so many applications, and some of them they didn't have any in-house skill sets for. For instance, like, let's take Bassware as an example. They no longer had people who could actually install and configure Bassware from scratch. So now the dilemma is that how do you set up a DR environment for an application you don't have skills for, right? So that's where RackWare was a lifesaver for both Vigilant and CentroMotion. That RackWare was able to create, like provision, create, copy, sync, all of the typical DR tasks for the applications, for all the various applications that CentroMotion has. And we were able to complete the project successfully. We were able to conduct successful form DR tests, and at the end of the project, CentroMotion had a complete documented DR process. So in case something happens, they no longer need to run around in circles, right? So they know what to do. Next slide. Pepper Construction is another one of our recent projects where we set up DR for them, again on Oracle Cloud. They are a construction company, and if you guys are familiar with the Computer Methods Incorporated, it's a popular construction software. And we created the DR for their entire scenic ecosystem. on OCI. And again, RackWare was a lifesaver because the CMIC version that they were using was an older version, and they were unable to get proper support for those applications and the infrastructure components from CMIC themselves because it's an older version. So RackWare again helped quite a bit with creating all of the virtual machines from scratch with the application code and everything. It was just beautiful. It was it was nice to be able to use a tool like RackWare for an application that was no longer being supported by the vendor. And same thing, we did their DR tests. Now they have documented DR processes and are very happy with the RackWare tool. So that's all I had for the case studies. Marcus, it's back to you for the Rapid Start program.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amrita, and thank you, Todd, as well, for the very informative presentation. Just a quick friendly reminder, if you do have any questions related to today's presentation, please submit it using the Q&A box, and we will address them in a minute here. But before we do get into the Q&A, I do want to share a few special takeaways that we're offering to our attendees today. First, let's quickly review our Disaster Recovery Rapid Start program. Vigilant is happy to have partnered up with Oracle and RackWare for this exclusive offer that includes a full stack disaster recovery solution on the Oracle Cloud infrastructure. Depending on the workloads, Vigilant and our partners can have your DR site up and running in a matter of weeks. This includes automated backups, failover, and fallback functionality. In addition, we do have 3 more special takeaways for today's attendees. Our first offer is a complimentary license. Attendees will get a free 30-day trial period to explore and gain hands-on experience with the RackWare platform. Our next offer is a migration readiness assessment, where Vigilant consultants will work with you through all the aspects that need to be addressed for successful migration to the cloud. The end result is a plan with actionable recommendations that gives you a much better insight into what you need to do, and by when, to make your cloud migration a success. And finally, we are happy to provide attendees with a free proof of concept. Here, we will help you define your business challenges to be solved on the cloud, and it will move one workload of your choice to the cloud at no cost. This POC will help you evaluate functionality, security, compliance, cost, operational efficiency, governance, and service management aspects of the cloud to fit your business needs. Vigilant Technologies, we will be following up with all attendees after this broadcast to answer any questions and further review these offers. With that being said, let's get back into some Q&A. First question, and I'll open this up to both Todd and Amrita. What is the time frame and what is the cost for disaster recovery?
So I'll take a shot at that. So when you say time frame, so there's 2 time frames. One is the setup, and then the other is the time to fail over. Of course, setup can vary quite a bit. It depends largely on the size of the data and the speed of the network. The network, our experience is the network is almost always the long pole in terms of both setup as well as the initial data transfer. Failover, depending how you configure it, can be a few minutes if you do those pre-provisioned servers, or it could be several hours if you elect for pre-provisioning.
Great, thank you, Todd. What's the difference between a cold DR and a warm DR?
I can take that one, Todd.
Sure.
So a cold DR essentially is almost a backup of your data, right? So if you have an Oracle database running on premise and you only want to host a cold DR, what you would really do is have a secondary site that obviously is mandatory for disaster recovery, and you'll have your Oracle database backed up to that site. A warm DR would be an Oracle database at your secondary site that is up and running and is in sync, in real-time sync with your primary database. But why is it not called a hot DR? It's not a hot DR because it's not running at your production's capacity. So if your production server, for instance, say is running on 8 cores, you don't necessarily want your DR server to be running on 8 cores, right? Because it's not really getting used. It's running, just applying archive logs. So in that case, you have a smaller server with your Oracle database running on that, but it's still staying in sync with your primary. That makes it warm, but it doesn't make it hot because it's not as powerful as your primary. So in a nutshell, that's the difference.
Thank you. Here's a good one. How reliable and does DR ever fail?
Everything fails, right? So that's it's nothing is foolproof, which is why you test and test some more, which is why when you set up your DR, irrespective of the platform, the provider, the technology, the tool, you have to test it. And that will essentially tell you whether it fails or not. So reliability is, it all depends on how well you test it and how often you test it.
Right, very good point, Arita. And I guess, one point to add is with cloud technology and then software like RackWare's, it's much easier to do a DR test. It's less costly. It's much quicker for setup as well as tear down. So we have customers that actually do up to 4 tests a year. Previously, with I guess I'll say an old-fashioned DR solution, it was maybe once every 2 years, and it was enormously difficult to test. So that those iterative tests and making sure that you update your run book after each one makes sure that when you have a real failure that you can come up and running in a timely fashion.
Fantastic. Thank you both again. Unfortunately, we are getting close to the end of our presentation, so that is all the time we have left for questions. If your question was unanswered, we will be sure to respond via email with an answer. So I want to take a quick minute to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you to our presenters as well to help share a little bit more information about cloud automation. Our team will follow up with our attendees to discuss the takeaways and discuss operations and how Vigilant Technologies could help create a roadmap to get your company to the cloud. Thank you all again and have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Marcus.